Well, we are in time. Hello, everybody. Hello again. Nice to see you all again in the chat. Welcome to our second webinar. It's about quality in digital learning. I'm Sybille, and you all should know me by now. I hope so. I'm your moderator and your first help desk. I help to facilitate your exchanges in the forums together with my great MOOC team. And today, maybe you've already seen, we have a special guest here. I'm gladly introducing you to Professor Dr. Ulf-Daniel Ehlers. He's the Vice President, Quality and Academic Affairs and Professor for Educational Management and Lifelong Learning at the Baden-Württemberg Cooperative State University. Well, he will share his expertise and input with us in this webinar. I see him already. Highly appreciated. Hello, Ulf. How are you?
Hello, Sybille. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
I can hear you loud and clear. Great. Happy to have you with us. And to everybody, as usual, please just share your questions and comments in the webinar chat window. You can share your topical and technical questions there, and we follow up everything. Well, let's start. Before we start with the topical exchange, I would like to thank you first for the introductory week, because we had a really great start. It was overwhelming last week with all those discussions on the platform and here in the webinar, and we thank you for your commitment. But let's get into this week's topic. It's about quality, because quality matters. You find this week more learning material here in the open house. You should see it on the slide right now. And you can find, or already have found there, material also on the Open ECD Check initiative. That's why we have Professor Ehlers with us today here. And of course, you can and should share your resources in the Beta house. And we are happy about all the materials you've already shared there. And again, discussions accompany our learning. So share your different perspectives here in the groups, and please join the forum in the groups. That would be really good for the topical exchange. So let's go on. We have new features. Maybe you already found them. I guess you already earned badges through the Do You Know game, and hope you shared your likes for the most liked this week. And we have the calendar. You find it also in the MOOC now. And again, we would like to point out to you that you fill your profile. There's a new field now. You can share the region and the country you are coming from. It would be great if you completed your profile very soon. Okay, for now, we would like you to remind you to improve the MOOC. If you haven't yet, please fill the pre-survey. We have a link, and I can share it with you in the chat too. So if you haven't yet, please fill and participate in the survey. Thank you so much. Well, before we jump into the webinar, very briefly, let me point out to you the difference between our group forums and the forum park, because the group forums you find under My Space and My Groups, and the forum park is under Community. And there is a big difference between those, and it's important for us to see again the difference, because in the group forum, you exchange within the groups you've joined before. For example, the group here, there is a forum, and if you click on the forum on the register card, you can join the exchanges there. It's very important for us, again, to clarify this, because we really have a topic-specific exchange here in the group forums, and in the forum park, we have rather informal and intercultural exchanges. You can make friends there, and you can ask organizational and technical questions. Also, you can share news and announcements, and you find our news and announcements on the MOOC. Okay. Again, it's also important as your contributions in the chat, for example, as you know them from the start page, or your contributions in the activity stream of the groups, the what's new contributions, they cannot be discussed in depth, and that's why it's so important to exchange in the group forums. Well, but let me stop here right now. We are here to listen to Ulf. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. We start now the webinar. Let me turn the mic over to Professor Dr. Ulf-Daniel Ehlers. Feel free to share your questions, everybody, on the topic in the webinar chat. Okay.
So thank you very much, Sybille, again, and hello to everybody out there. I've just looked at the country distribution, and we are very well distributed. We have 55% of all participants coming out of Europe, from Australia to North America, Africa, South America. That's very, very interesting, and I'm very happy to share with you some ideas. I'm sure that if I would go through the participants list, I know some of you because I've been working for the last, I don't know, 8 years or 10 years with some communities from GIZ and other organizations which were actually in the group where we discussed quality and the ECB check model, which is also part of this MOOC. And so I'm very familiar with the concerns and the situations many of you have. And I can tell you that when you go around the world and you discuss digital learning, you often come to exactly this one question, that is, how can we convince our heads of department, our management in our university, or the persons in charge of our vocational training institution, or our school headmaster, how can we convince them to do more digital learning, to do more e-learning, to use computers in the classroom? And I can tell you that I've even led these discussions with people from south of Chile who were in a rural school with only 12 pupils and no ICT connection at all, were carrying around on a motorcycle the emails they were writing on a computer in school on a USB stick to the next bigger city to send out these emails. So there are lots of really interesting, very, very interesting contexts in which actually e-learning and the computer in a classroom, in an educational scenario, plays a role, and where the contexts and the, let's say, the reasons and the rationales given for the use of e-learning really have to be worked out very well, because they might not be obvious. But in the end of the day, there's one reason which is always predominating the discussions, and that is we have to see that ICT for education, that digital learning is raising the quality of education. And so this is already one point I would like to make in advance of this presentation. That is the point: we can talk about quality of digital learning on the one hand side, and we ask the question, how do we have to organize digital learning in order for it to be of high quality? And we can talk about another discussion, that is quality through digital learning. So how can we improve educational scenarios by using ICT and digital learning materials? And this is something I would like to put at the beginning, and now jump right into my discussion. My slide set, which I'm presenting here, is much longer than the time I have to talk to you. I have targeted about 20 minutes for my discussion, for my presentation, and then we go into the discussion. And I will once in a while pause to take some questions also. The slide set is available to you, so you can go through it. The first thing is that when you talk about quality, e-learning is not e-learning, and therefore quality of e-learning cannot be quality of e-learning. You know that there are different modes of e-learning, from the enriched mode to the integrated or blended mode, we also say, to the completely virtual courses. And this slide shows you the differences for higher education, for example. And so the question is also, we have to be very sensitive to that, and we will answer the question of quality also according to the different modes. If you only, the second question is the question, what are the strategies you're using? Are you using strategies at all? What is the target, the aim, the objective of using e-learning? If you're using e-learning like it says here on the slide, in a way that you say, my focus, my target, my objective is actually reform-oriented, like in this first quadrant here on the slide, that means I am actually looking to develop the educational programs I'm having and to bring about a new learning culture. Then, if this is your objective, quality is something different from a situation in which you are, for example, trying to explore new market and new target groups, new markets and new target groups. Quality then can be something different. So again, very shortly and briefly in the beginning, the context and the objective which you have to use e-learning determines, of course, also what you would think of quality. Then e-learning is changing constantly, whereas in the, let's say, 90s and the year 2000 and between 2000 and 2005, we were rather using ICT and e-learning in a way to store materials and to make them available like islands in a big sea of the internet. Nowadays, we are thinking about e-learning in the way of, also we are using sometimes the terminology e-learning 2.0. We are using e-learning in a way that materials are not stored to, so to speak, to download them, but we are using e-learning much more as gate. So that means we would like to connect people through this gate, through the computer, to connect them into groups like we are now connected in this MOOC. And we listen to each other and we discuss and we learn from each other. And so this is a way to use e-learning as a MOOC, as a gate rather than an island. Now jumping into the question of quality really. Think about what you would feel quality is relevant for. And here I pause for 30 seconds so that you can read through these different bullet points, these bubbles on the slide. And I'm reading the chat and try to find an interesting question which I can talk about.
Well, there was a question by Charlie. He asked directly in the beginning, what does quality mean for you? But I think we will learn about this in this webinar. And being German, do you think quality is just the lack of mistakes? For example, a system which is running without interruption.
This is a super question. Thank you very much for that, Charlie, and for pointing that out, Sybille. My personal, I'm an educational scientist, so that's my background. I'm not an engineer or not a medicine guy. I'm an educational person. So my understanding of quality is what I call a transformative understanding of quality. Quality means if an educational scenario, if an educational program is enabling you to transform your skills and your competence set as a person, to allows you to make experiences which are then which you can then use to be able to act more competent for the next problem you are encountering. And that's what I call a transformative understanding. That's much beyond the pure absence of a mistake. But there are different understandings of quality, not just the transformative one or the, let's say, the correctness as a measurement, but also the user-oriented. In a user-oriented understanding of quality, a book from a library which has been borrowed 30 times is of lower quality than the book which has been borrowed 60 times, for example. There are different understandings and concepts of quality. For example, on this slide, we see that quality can have to do with personal development. Quality can have to do with connected learning. Quality can have to do with flexibility or with accessibility, can focus on new learning cultures. So there are different quality objectives, and the interesting thing is that actually for each context you would find that you have to create your own set of quality criteria. Because in a higher education institution in Uganda, for example, it might be something totally different which is important and which is focused on than in a higher education institution in, let's say, Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, in the University of Dar es Salaam. I've been to both of these places, and I can tell you that the discussions about quality of e-learning follow very different rationales. So the question which has just been put in this chat by Esther, what is quality to you, is in the end of the day mattering, because there is no world objective measurement for quality in education or e-learning. I'm going a step further now.
So
Please.
sorry. There is a question about immersive learning. What does it mean? It was on your last slide.
Immersive means, it's very simple. If you're learning languages, the non-immersive way, the presentation, the transmissive way is you're learning from a book. If you go the immersive learning way, it means you go to the country. You're immersing yourself into the context where this language is spoken. That's immersive learning. Very interesting question, very interesting concept also. So now talking about quality, let's see where we go with these issues. If we look at the old understanding of learning and the new understanding of learning, the question, how is it actually conceptualized, is answered in a very different way. In the let's say in the old world, the internet world, not the social media world, the learning access is actually very much technology focused. And the understanding of learning is, as it says here on the slide, very much knowledge focused, where experts or teachers are transmitting the knowledge to students which do not have this knowledge actually. And students have to log on the platform, have to access the internet, and have to download in a pull way the materials they want to learn. In the new way of learning, in the Web 2.0 or e-learning 2.0 way, we are very much looking at something different. It is more that we are constantly connected in our mobile phones. It is more that we are working with communities, that it is not so much the issue, also what we can see here, it's not so much the issue that one expert teaches us the knowledge we do not have. It is more that we are taking what we need to know for our problem-solving questions from the crowd, that we are asking and trying to use this wisdom of the crowd. It is more about posting and publishing and creating content ourselves, like you do it also here in the MOOC when you are discussing on the forums. It is really something where you're giving something from you and others learn through this. This is an interactive way, actually. And you know that the tools we are using for that are actually very, very diverse. We've made a compilation of a lot of tools, but this is already 2 or 3 years old, so maybe it's not quite up to date. But still, you can see there are lots of tools we use to be connected. I'm sure if we would ask around our group here now, everybody with 3 or 4 preferred tools to use or internet sites to read, and so we would also get a big collection. Learning today is ubiquitous. It takes everywhere. It can take place everywhere. Learners are actually the organizers. It is more about participation in learning processes and not so much about acquisition. And these are all important quality factors for e-learning. Learning takes place not so much anymore as one episode, only between 20 and 25, or 15 and 20, or 20 to 15, but learning is a multi-episodic story, really. It is not so much only bound to one particular institution where you always go throughout your whole life, but you find that you today learn from MOOCs, from institutions which you have never before learned, maybe. You learn in different times, you learn in different languages. So learning takes place lifelong. It is community related. It is informal and non-formal. This is one of the biggest problems, or one of the big challenges we are actually having today, that the formal part of learning is actually much more valued often in our institutions, the certification you receive in the end, than the type of learning which takes place at the coffee table or at home at supper or dinner, when your colleague or your father or your mother or your child explains to you something which might be of a great value to you and relevant to your job also, but you cannot get to the market this kind of learning. You can only bring to the market the type of learning which you have received a certification for. So the combination of this informal learning and non-formal learning which you have in communities like this MOOC, for example, this is very important to combine it with the formal. So e-learning is really changing its face from a more distribution-oriented approach, like we can see here, to a collaboration and reflection-oriented approach, where media, the internet, are used to create communities and wikis, and where assignments are taking place in form of a portfolio, where weblogs are used. It's more about communication and it's about collaboration, and not so much only anymore about information and presentation and so on. Technology is not an island anymore. Technology really is a gate. And I think where we are now in this presentation, at this point, is very, very important for quality. Because if you now think about quality and you think back to the beginning of your mental image of what quality might be, then you can see that the question what is quality is very much depending on what kind of learning do you think, do you have in mind. And again, another dimension of this difference of learning worlds you can see here. Are you looking at a learning? This is a quality dimension. Are you looking at a learning which takes place with standard content, which is not changeable anymore. For example, in a university, you have a fixed curriculum, so that's standard content. And where you learn as an individual, then you are very much in this quadrant here, where students are learning with pre-formed knowledge. Or are you on the other hand of the continuum, where learning takes place in communities and maybe with not a fixed curriculum, where students work together in knowledge communities like the MOOC today, and again, then you are in this quadrant of this picture. So in the old e-learning world, which is put up here, Stephen Downes calls learning management systems, so the learning platforms we are using in our institutions, and by the way, also my institution is using that, he's calling them costly data graves, walled gardens. They are actually places where people can go and have to stay in to learn. And in the new world, we talk about rip, mix, and learn concept, in which we are very much interactive, producing materials as learners. And again, the question, what is quality, is very, very depending on which context you are looking. I'm going over this, and I'm coming to the quality issue itself. Let's look at this upper side, the e-learning 2.0 quality part. In this e-learning 2.0 quality part, we do not so much look at predefined learning content. Learning processes are highly heterogeneous. Learning is not so much taking place in formal institutions, and so on and so on. But the old quality understandings for the traditional way of learning is also like this question I was just taking, very much an understanding that quality means no errors, no mistakes. It means quality assurance is an analysis if a certain level of quality can be met. It means that there has to be a clear quality management within the organization, and so on and so on. And how does this go together now? Isn't this actually a contradiction? How can we find this very, let's say, fluid way of learning a quality concept? How can we quality assure in this e-learning world, in this MOOC, for example, where learning takes exactly like this place, like it is said here on this slide, and said as e-learning 2.0, how can we quality assure learning here? So we believe that there are methods for the old world and there are methods for the new world. What are these methods actually? Let's go them. E-learning 1, e-learning 2. You see it here on the slide. Where in the old world, actually the teachers are the one who are assessing the learners. In the new world, the quality is assessed through peers and through other learners. Where in the old world, we are very much focusing on the quality of the learning platform as the place to assure quality. We need to look in the new world at the quality of the personal learning environment. Where in the old, let's say, understanding of e-learning, we are looking quality assure the learning, we're looking at the content. We are looking in the new world more at the content the user has created, not the expert has created. And so on. We are not so much looking at the course structure, but today we are more looking at the communication, at that what happens between the learners. The question is, do we find methodologies to do that actually? And the interesting is, I'm trying to go through this now, the interesting thing is that, yes, there are methodologies for this. These are the methodologies which we can actually use. Of course,
I would like to interrupt you. because I think it would be a very nice stop a break now here, because we have some questions, but they are perfectly introducing your slide now, and I think it would be nice to have just a little break. The participants here in the webinar are discussing your slides or the way you're going forward, and they're having the same questions in mind that you developed within your presentation now. And they are asking, for example, how can we prove our quality of digital learning? What criteria are there? Or Admina question, what is a great tool for creating quality criteria? And Al-Shamani says, have you got the answer on which concept of quality ECB check is based on? I think we will come to this a little later. But Shamika and Yanaka, they say Web 2.0 introduced more interactive communication, but what are the deliberations of Web 3.0 to the learning? That would be maybe a question for later. And Arnaud says, with e-learning 2.0, is there still a guarantee to have quality e-learning content for a quality e-learning with all the sharing and the issues of verified content and sources? And Charlie Yan says, Arnaud, I think this is a good question. How can Web 2.0 or 3.0 can be quality assured? And to our participants now, I think we are now at the crucial point. We are now talking about quality 2.0 methods and compare them to the world we had before. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope I don't miss so many of the questions. I think these are exactly the questions we need to put. The first thing, there's a good and a bad news. The good news is you can assure quality. Bad news is there is not a single golden bullet way of doing that. That's the real bad news in quality assurance. So that means, let that sink in. Let that sink in. You are here in the top international MOOC and you're listening to the quality of e-learning discussion or presentation. And the presenter tells you there is not the golden bullet way of assuring quality. So what do you do now, actually? What does it mean for you? That means for you that you need to understand what are the underlying principles in quality assurance. And now we come to the second question. The principles in e-learning are that e-learning is more and more individualizing the learning process. Where we come from a situation where we pack 200 students in one lecture hall and read to them all at the same time, in the same room, the same message. In e-learning, in the future, we can more and more work with smaller groups, which are learning at different times, in different rooms. Maybe even learning different things. And that means for quality assurance, you also need to individualize the quality assurance process. That's the fundamental law number one, actually. Individualization through the use of educational technology. The second law is there's no golden way, not one size fits all quality concept for everybody. If you take this together, you come to a situation where the understanding of quality assurance is reaching the status of an art. This is really the situation. Because you need for your own, imagine you are a teacher and you're teaching in a class and you sit together with your fellow teacher and you two sit together with two fellow teachers of the college across the street. Now, what we are doing, and I've done that a lot of times with colleagues, ask them a question, hey colleagues, what is good learning for you? And you will get a very interesting discussion. Some people might say, well, good learning means that the students are acquiring exactly the right knowledge which I'm teaching them and writing them later down in a test without a failure. The second person might say, no, well, good learning actually is if the students understand the principles underlying what I would like to teach them, so that also in other contexts they can be good at solving problems than the context I was explaining to them. The third one will say, good learning is learning a lot in short time. The fourth one will say learning and so on. So you will get a lot of different understandings for what is good quality. And you need to find your own way, and you need to negotiate this with your colleagues. And your institution needs to create their own strategy. And this is really the good and the bad news, so to speak. Now, the question was asked, what kind of criteria can we use for this creating our own story? What kind of criteria can we use in order to find a good strategy, a good concept for our school, our college, for me as a teacher? And there I can tell you that all the quality concepts which are out there are good and useful, but probably exactly fit your context. So you need to go there and you need to look at them, and you need to find out which of the criteria, which of the evaluation questions of this questionnaire, which of the methodologies proposed here for quality assurance in this particular concept I'm looking, which you can find lots of in the internet, over thousands of quality concepts, of criteria lists, and so on. Which of these are actually fitting to my context? And you need to go and you need to select criteria which are fitting your context, your school, your college, and some others are not so suitable. And then you delete them. And finally, you have your own quality concept, and you can share that with others in your school. This is, by the way, exactly the situation we were in the beginning facing when we were trying to create this quality concept called Open ECB Check. The Open ECB Check, which is also part of this MOOC in the next week, is exactly a concept which has been created in that way. We were taking many organizations and asking them, if you do digital learning in Africa, in South America, in Asia, what is important for you? And then we tried to select these important criteria, and then we tried to put them into a framework, and we came out with a situation in which we said, aha, there are criteria in 8 different fields. For example, learning design has some criteria, or testing the students has some criteria, or informing the learners in advance has some criteria, or technology environment has some criteria, and so on. But it is important to understand that this is actually something you need to do very individual. And when you look at this slide here now, you can see that in e-learning, we recommend that some of these methodologies, like evaluation and assessment, which you see here on the slide, and review and reflection, are used to quality assure learning. And since I discussed with you now a little bit this move towards individualization, we believe that in large courses, like this one, for example, it cannot be all done by the teacher. We have to more and more in the future involve the learner themselves into groups which are peer reviewing themselves, where they are reflecting together. And I can tell you, colleagues, this is possible. It is difficult to do. It is hard to do. You need to have a long approach to that, a long-term approach to that. But if you start to move from this e-learning 1.0 transmissive approach to this more community-oriented approach, it is important to understand that you can not use quality methodologies from the old world anymore. So some of these, yeah.
I'm using this break because I think there are some questions or comments that might be helpful again. Arusiak, for example, he asks, is it the same, the quality for learners and quality for the stakeholders? I know we talked about this a little in the last minutes, within the last few minutes, but I think it's interesting again, because we are now focusing on the learners, on, for example, within our MOOC, that quality has to be defined also by them. And still there are stakeholders, there are different goals and perspectives, how to bring them together. Is it the same? Is it the same quality? Or do we have to find kind of, point to meet?
Well, the experiences we have is that these are very different quality perspectives. We usually name 4 quality perspectives. One is the policymaker. That's the person who's making the laws in your country. And when they are financing the educational system, they have certain understandings of quality, for example, low drop rates. The second one is the manager of the institution, the director at the institution of a higher education institution, for example. They have also their own view on quality. The third one is the teachers and the educational professionals, we call them. They have their own views, and then the learners' views are, again, a different category. So I always say that in quality development, it is important to understand the learner's context and expectations, and to marry this information with the teacher's perspective, because he has a certain objective when teaching something, but he needs to know, or she needs to know, what the learners actually are looking at it, having in mind. So to bring these two together is very important.
Okay, thank you. There is still a kind of question on understanding. What is the difference between informal and non-formal? And that was by Zainab, and Mike is asking, is what we are doing formal or informal? So we have the informal, the non-formal, and the formal way. Yeah.
Non-formal is institution-based, but without certification, and informal, so what we are doing here, for example, now, you won't get a certificate, I believe, at least, but still it is an off, for the MOOC.
There is a certificate.
Okay, so sorry. If you think about an educational offering like a MOOC, for example, where you would not receive a certification, but still which is, let's say, offered by experts, it is a non-formal learning. And informal, or some in pedagogy we also say incidental learning, informal is actually the learning which takes place at home at the dinner table, so to speak, which is not in a official environment, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. Before we step on, I still have a question about the personal learning environment. I know that was some slides before, but there were still some questions. There were 3 persons asking what is meant by the personal learning environment, and the quality of personal learning has to do with informal learning is a question in that context too. About the personal learning environment.
Yeah, we can learn in different environments. One environment is a classroom, for example. In a classroom, the typical characteristics is that a teacher has prepared a lesson and is teaching this lesson to the students. And often, the teacher has prepared the knowledge, the teaching materials, in a way that he is teaching to the pupils things he thinks they should know, which they do not know yet. So that's, let's say, one possibility. The other possibility, very, very far away from this classroom, is you. You are joining a MOOC. And in this MOOC, there are 15 weeks. Since you are only interested in 2 or 3 of these weeks, you only attend these presentations and discussions of 2 or 3 of these weeks. So you are choosing. You are the one. You are the one getting your personal learning environment through joining exactly what you are interested in, but not having to learn everything a teacher is explaining to you. The term learning environment is, of course, a little bit larger. The personal learning environment is consisting of your smartphone, which you're using to access information, the MOOC you're accessing and learning, maybe also some classroom-based activities which you do in a college or whatever, in a further education course which you're taking, a training course or teacher training course or whatever, and so on. So that's not something which is predetermined for you by a teacher. It is something which you are choosing and creating yourself, actually. That's the personal learning environment. And the question how to assure quality for a personal learning environment can only be done by you. Again, looking at the present slide, you see here self-evaluation, for example. This can only be used, self-evaluation is a method, self-assessment, which can be used in order for yourself to evaluate how well you are doing, actually.
Well, thank you. I think we can step forward for the moment. We still have 13 minutes, and I didn't want to interrupt you too long. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to go into one particular quality methodology, which is often a bit misunderstood. Self-evaluation. What is it actually? Is it actually that teachers have to evaluate the pupils or students? Professors have to evaluate the students? Or can students evaluate themselves? You know, all these talk which I am giving to you here about flexibilization and individualization and so on, does it actually mean that teachers are not allowed to grade their learners anymore? Question mark. Well, in a way, it means that teachers have a different role in the grading process and quality assessment process. If you take the methodology, which is, by the way, empirically researched a lot in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s of last century, this methodology, the effectiveness of the methodology of self-evaluation for school children and for students then later on as well, you see that self-evaluation is a very well worked out protocol which follows 4 steps. The first one is that the learners themselves, they are involved into the definition of criteria for evaluation of learning. They are coached by the development of this criteria, and they are coached by the development of their own objectives. So this is exactly what I was talking about. Although this methodology is way old, yeah, this is coming from a time where there is no there was no internet available, no e-learning. So in step 1, the learners are involved in creating their own objectives and their own criteria, which they use later on to judge if they have reached these objectives of the learning process. Okay, so it's something which is really going from this one-size-fits-all education approach to the individual education approach. In step 2, learners apply the criteria to their own learning experiences. So they're sitting down, they're thinking about, did I meet my own objectives actually? Did I learn something? And I can tell you that in one of our master programs, we are actually doing that. In the beginning of the 2 years master program, we are having 4 half-day workshop with us, with the students, in which they are reflecting about their own competences and they are defining what they think they would learn, they would like to learn, and where they think they would like to develop skills, discussion, negotiation skills, and so on. And then in the end of the day, after 2 years, they're coming back to this very lists of things they wanted to learn, and they start to assess themselves, did I actually make progress there? And in between also we have some steps. So that's step 2. Step 3 is that there's a negotiation taking place actually. That now teachers come into the game. The teachers are sitting down with the learners and they say, so, dear learner, dear student, what did you actually have as an objective? What was your criteria to judge this objective? And how do you think you did? And now show this to me. And then teachers can teach and coach the learners on how they did. And the fourth step, and that's very important, is actually to think about what do I take from this whole exercise. I was thinking about what do I want to learn, how do I judge that? I judged myself, I reflected with the teacher on this. And now, what do I learn from that? What do I still need to know in the future? So that's your own learning plan, so to speak, which you are making in the fourth step. So we are not so much using assessment here in a way that we assess the learning which took place, but we are really using the assessment part in order to help the learning process. That's just one example.
Yeah, share your example, and okay. After this,
that's just one example of methodology, which we believe can be very, very fruitful for e-learning and for digitalization of education, because it is a more individual approach than the standard approach.
Yeah. And there is one question from a participant in the chat, fitting very well. Do you think e-learning, and I understand her as a kind of individual learning, and massive education or schooling and instruction are incompatible?
That's a good question, because it is asking about the paradigms behind it.
Possible to support learners in school really individually and make use of such methods. And I think that's the sense behind it.
Yeah, I think yes, it is possible. Many students, many teachers do this also, more or less. We also made a lot of experience with designing normal, standard university lecture halls in a way that students still start from their own questions and work in teams and work on their individual interests and still study mechanics or study management. So this can be combined actually, and underlying this whole discussion is of course also a normative judgment. This has also to be clear. I mean, it's clear. We structure our schools in a way, not just by chance, or the law says so. We structure our schools because it is a decision we took. It is a decision we took. And it's important to see that some people say learning is the result of teaching. I would not say so. I would actually say learning can be helped by teaching, but is not a direct result of teaching. I think it is an illusion that we think teaching leads to learning. Because learning is a process of individual acquisition of knowledge and competences, of individual development. In one setting, the methodology a teacher uses can be very helpful. In another one, the same methodology with other target groups can be totally useless. So that means the individual learner is actually the one where quality criteria need to be targeted towards. And that again leads to this discussion we are having now, individual learning, a category which makes sense. And is self-evaluation as a quality methodology for individual learning something which can help this process? So it's actually, but now I would like to add something. I've been all around the world in classrooms and lecture halls from different colleagues, and I know that the last time I've been to a lecture hall in Yaoundé in Cameroon, and the colleague I was visiting, he told me that well, I have 1,200 students in this lecture hall, and I do not have a good microphone. So how can you say that individual learning and your quality methodologies can be applied here? How do we bring this about? And you see here that there is a big gap, you know, between all these talk I'm doing here and some of the contexts which you might teach in, or also I might teach in. And still, I think it is useful to understand that if we talk about quality development, it has to start from the question, how can an individual learner learn good?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that we have 3 minutes left now, and that if there is some example or maybe some method you would like to share, that you have now only 1 minute left, because I still have another question, and I didn't want to take it too long over the time. So, okay.
I think I'm coming to the conclusion then. The conclusion is that the talk I was giving to you today is actually the talk where OpenECB Check philosophy is based on. OpenECB Check is what we call an open quality framework. It gives you 50 criteria, and it says select those criteria which you think are useful for your own context, your classroom or your institution, or even your country. Some countries are even using OpenECB Check as a, let's say, a basic concept. And this, I think, is the state of the art of quality development today. And the basis why this makes sense to orient it towards your individual needs were the subject of this talk today. Thank you very much, everybody out there. As I look at the participants list, I see that we have not lost a single participant, and I think that's great patience of you. Thank you very much. And Sybille, thank you very much. And the GSF, thank you very much. And all the other institutions, thank you very much for organizing and doing that. And now I think also in the MOOC, we can continue to discuss about this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ulf. And applause. I think we could talk about it even, hours and hours, but still we have the MOOC, we have the discussions there, we have the forums and groups there. And I would like to with some nice comments by a participant. I didn't copy the name, shame on me. I think there is a general doubt about how evaluation and measurement should be. The issue about the having and not having a curriculum, and how quality should be measured if there is no curriculum. The aspect of involving learners more, and how teachers should go about quality, I think is a great part of the discussion going on. And I think it's a great part of the discussion that we are continuing in the MOOC, where we can, for example, clarify questions like Alexandra posed, what are strategies to ensure quality in mobile learning? Because that's why we are together to co-create new quality criteria for new learning formats in the new learning world. Well, I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ulf, for that presentation, and hope to see you in the MOOC. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.